Hi everyone, welcome to my sewing room. Thank you for coming. Made me clean it. So today I want to mention that we have a few people in the background. We have Amy, Meredith, and Ryan here today. So they're going to be in the background, just watching everything. That's who sees the questions, not me. So if you have questions, put them in the post and they'll relay them to me and I'll try and answer them to you the best I can. So today we're going to do Design Applique, and we're also going to do a few other things besides just Design Applique, because I don't want to just focus on Design Applique because there's so many other things that you could do. We're going to include some of the software so that you can see some of that. But yeah, Design Applique honestly has been my favorite thing on this machine since I got it. I am a huge fan of Applique even before I got this machine, and today I'm working on the Epic 2. So without further ado, let me bring up a sample that I carry with me when I'm out on the road, and it's the one that I get most questions about. Sorry, dropping things on the floor. Oh, I thought these were much closer to me. Okay, so this quilt here, am I holding it up right? So this quilt, I'll scoot back so that you can see more of it. Okay, so this quilt I get a lot of questions about, and I will be honest, I started making this using the circle attachment, and this is a whole cloth. And I was talking to one of my colleagues about it, and they said, why are you doing it the hard way? And you can do this with the circle attachment, but because we have Design Applique on the machine, it was so much easier. When you're doing with the circle attachment, when you're doing a whole cloth, that the fabric could just really pull down and not give you a really good circle. Plus, you also have to make sure that you have it well stabilized when you're using the circle attachment. But with Design Applique, you don't have to use as heavy stabilizer because that stabilizer, when you're using the circle attachment, it helps stiffen the fabric a little bit, so you have a little more control over it. But if you're using Design Applique, then you're hooping it and you don't need this heavy stabilizer. And I'm just rambling at this point. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm going to show you what I did to create those particular designs. So of course, we love those monsters. I think all of us who own the machine have probably done something with the monsters. So right now I'm on my home page and I'm already in embroidery. So I am going to start new. And these designs come up. And in order for me to know what size circles I needed for those particular monsters, I needed to bring the monsters in. And I like him, so I'm going to bring him in. Okay, when you bring him in, it's going to choose the size hoop that best fits that design. And I know that I wanted to do the 360 by 260 hoop because I wanted to get as many circles into that hooping as I could. So I will change my hoop to the 360 by 260. Now that I have him in, down here we have, and don't mind my broken fingernail, down here we have Design Applique. And we have these shapes here. So you can see what we have here. And we also have alphabets, letters, and some punctuation. We have a period and a dash. That's okay. We're going to go first the circle. And everyone uses the circle the most, but that's not a big deal. So once I choose the circle, down here I have 6 different options. So this is a satin stitch. This is an irregular satin stitch, and some people refer to that as the grass stitch, and this is candle wicking. These are the same thing, but they are a little more pronounced. So this one, they're just a little bit wider. This one's just a little bit further away. When I made this quilt, I just randomly chose between those 6 so that I would have them all represented, so I have a sample of each one of them stitched out. But I'm just going to go with that first one. I will close this window just to pop it out of my way. And I wanted this, you notice on the quilt, he's kind of standing. He's standing on the circle. He's not just floating randomly. Art school has taught me that if you have something with legs or anything, you need to ground it. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm grounding him. So this is pretty good. I'm just going to center this a little bit. Then I also had an outer circle that he's standing in. So in order for me to get that next one, I have to touch I have to say, okay, I like that one first. Now I touch somewhere off the screen. If I don't touch somewhere off the screen, then I'm telling the machine that I want to go back in and change that, but nothing's chosen. We'll go back into Design Applique and back to my shapes, and we'll close that to get it out of my way. I am going to make this bigger. And we want to stay within the hoop, and I had them offset. And I'll show you those a little again in detail. So, and I'm just going to choose the same. And there is my monster. And yep, we like that circle. Now, if we go into our arrange here, it shows that the monster is going to stitch out first, and that, we don't want. We want him to stitch out last because he is going to be standing on those circles, not having the circles go over him. So we are just going to move him down. And the reason why I brought him in first is because I needed to see how he's going to fit within these circles. And that looks pretty good to me. So now that I have those, this is a 360 by 260 hoop, and I want to fill this hoop. So I'm also going to go in and grab some more circles. And you don't have to use circles. I could have used something else, but I had this vision, and this vision was they were just floating in space. They were just out there floating. And I was inspired by the fabric that's on the back, and I can show you that. Now let's go back into Design Applique, choose another shape. And again, I'm just going to go with the circle. And I really did not do particular sizes on this. I just wanted to get more circles in there. And I like that one. And let's go get another one. And one more. Let's see if we can. So that one's a little bit bigger. He's outside the hoop. That's okay. We can fix that. Right here, we have, slaps it right into the hoop. It doesn't center it. It just brings it within the hoop. I will lower this just a little. So you have different tools here that you can use to fine tune. Sometimes when we're moving things, we just move them a little too fast with our fingers. But this is our move, and this is our rotate, and that is our scale. So whatever button here is highlighted, that's what this is working for, that wheel. And I'm just going to lower that until just so that's further away. Once I was happy with this, I was good to go. I can just say stitch out. And I did this pretty randomly. This was literally a free form quilt. So what I did was I created, and you can tell that these three were all one hooping. And I just randomly placed my hoop. I hooped my fabric just randomly and stitched out all of the big monsters first. And then once I had all of the monsters just randomly on the quilt, and I'll show it to you again. And if you look closely, you can see which circles went with which, which monster. I did try and make sure that there was 3 circles in each hooping. And then after I got all of those hooped and stitched out, then I went in and rehooped the top, making sure that I left a little bit in. And let me grab my hoop so that'll make sense to you. So when I rehooped, I just went to a blank area and I left something visible in the hoop so that when I used my app in the design placement app, that's the MySewNet app. If you don't have that app, you want that app, especially if you have any of the Wi-Fi capable Viking machines. That app totally changed the way I do embroidery. I was able to just snap a picture and see that hoop on my screen, and there you go. So I left some pieces in the hoop, and I did that purposely so that I can use that as for positioning. So I had an idea of how close everything was. It was a perspective kind of thing. And then I just randomly, filled in all the blanks as how big my quilt was. And I did leave a margin so I had plenty of room that I could perfectly square it up. Can you show how you got the Design Applique again? Oh, hopefully you did see that. I did do it a few times. So I'll tap off, and right here, this is Design Applique. Now these aren't labeled, and that's okay. If you're unsure which icon is which icon, sometimes it's hard to remember. If you just come up here to your question mark and you touch an icon, it shows you exactly what icon that is. And I'm not going to lie, I use this machine almost every day. I still use that question mark. There's no shame in it. They gave it to you so that you can use it. Okay. So that is how I worked out that quilt. I also have this one. This is just a little table runner. And I basically did the same thing. I brought in the design. This design was from MySewNet library. It's, all 3 of them, they're the same. And I could build this for you real quick. We didn't see how you moved into Design Applique. Let's see. I wonder if, oops, sorry, I forgot to switch my screen. So here you go. This is Design Applique. It is, did we get it in? Sorry about that. It is this one. Let me see. I think I got a pointer here. No, you still don't see. Let's see. Okay. It's this one right here. So it looks like a flower. And like I said, if you're not sure, you can touch your, let's see if I can pull back more so you can see everything that I'm touching here. So right here you have your question mark. If you touch that, and then you come down here and you touch those icons, it shows you Design Applique. So that question mark there, it's a friend. It helps me out a lot. And if you're not sure what Design Applique is, you can read all about it. It takes you to the JoyOS advisor on the machine, and you can read all kinds of information about it. And you do not need to be connected to the Wi-Fi to access reading more about it. Sorry about that, guys. I didn't realize that my screen wasn't on. Okay, go back to me, and I'll show you this one. So this I did almost the same way as I did the monster quilts, and these are thread velvet designs. So I wonder you can see that. See how fuzzy they are? So cool. These are in MySewNet library. And if you are connected to the Wi-Fi and you have the silver or platinum version of MySewNet subscription, you do have access to all 8,000 plus designs that are on MySewNet, which is super cool because I totally love going in there. I'm not one to stitch out a design multiple times. So having just, being able to touch one and use it and then be done with it is ideal for me. I don't have to worry about, where I downloaded it to or what flash drive I saved it to. It's right here. I can access it on my machine. And if you like, I can show you that. What size hoop did you reference? I used the 260 by 360 hoop for the monster quilts and for this one, because I wanted to get as many hoopings in as few hoopings as I possibly could. So let me show you. I'm sure you know what it looks like, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and show you what it looks like to see MySewNet on the machine. So go over here to the machine, and I am just going to delete all of this. So go to Arrange, select all, and delete. And yep, I'm sure this icon right here, it looks like a flower with the World Wide Web icon. If you touch that, this takes you to MySewNet. And what usually comes up first are the designs that are most recent. Every Friday, they put up new designs. So it's worth popping in there. Sometimes I just, when I'm doing a demo, I'll open it and be surprised. See, hey, what's new? So, and then you can also, oh, look, they added the bear. They have the bunny and now they have the bear. How cool is that? See, surprise. Let's see. If you are looking for something specific, you can type it in and there's the cats. So you can just bring in any of these designs and use them, add to them, just do a whole bunch more with them. It's all up to you. Okay. All right, I have another sample for you, and I'll walk you through this one. I challenged myself to upscale a sweater. This is not going to fit me. This is a child's sweater. And I learned some things about upscaling. I know a lot about upscaling, but this one really threw me for a loop. And I'll talk about that later. So let me show you what I did for this one. And we'll go back to the machine. And I did this in a few steps, and the few steps will make clear once I start walking through them. I started with Design Applique, and you see we have these shapes here. We do not have a diamond, and that is okay. I chose the square, and for the square, I rotated it, and I hope you can see this. If I touch my rotate number, I can type in 45. And now we have a diamond, but I needed it a little more, a different size. I needed it more of a diamond, less than a square on its side. So I went into scale. And right here, I'm going to come closer because that's what we're focused on now. Let's see, is that fuzzy? There you go. So I'm in scale, and here you can see the sizes. To get the diamond that I wanted, I unlocked it, so now I can change it unproportionally. And from playing with this for about a day or so, I know exactly what size I want. So I will touch that one, and I will need that to be 64. And then I need that one to be 70.8. I have that information written down. So now I have this nice, this diamond. We're going to move that. And I chose the candle wicking because if you look at the sample has rhinestones on it to get for the other diamonds. And I really wanted that to mimic it, if that makes sense. So once I'm happy with this, and you'll notice that it brought it in to a smaller hoop, and that's okay. So it brought it into the 120 by 120 because that's the best hoop I have that will fit this design. I know I need this bigger, not a big deal. We're going to change the hoop back to 260 by 360. I find that seems to be the hoop I use the most. And I need a series of 5 of these. But before I bring more in, I want to go in and change the colors. When you do applique, you have the first one is your placement, then your tacking, and then your satin stitch. I want to do a multiple of 5 of these, and I was thinking ahead, and I know for sure that I want to be able to do all of the placement stitches together so that I only need to lay one strip of fabric in my hoop, opposed to doing each individual diamond by themselves. So I touch the first color, and I touch my color wheel. I will just pick any obscure color. At this point, it doesn't mean anything because just because I chose yellow doesn't mean I have to put yellow thread in my needle to stitch it out. This is just so that I can differentiate those 3 steps. Every time you use Design Applique, those 3 steps are always going to come in as black. So it's up to me to either watch my machine and jump around, or I can just change these colors. So when I go to do a color sort and merge, they'll all stitch out as one. So we'll just go for yellow for that one. And for my tacking down, we'll do the same thing. We'll choose just a different color and say, okay. And I don't need to change the black one. It can just stay that color. That's fine. And we'll close that up. And now, if I move this to help me, if you go here, I'm going to turn on my grid. So right here is my grid down at the bottom. I know you don't see the top, but oh, your screen is blurry. That better? Okay, I know you don't necessarily see the top one, but I brought in my grid to help me line things up, and you can change the size of your grid if you like. And now I'm just going to duplicate. And you see they're kind of just snapping into place. And I need just one more. Okay. I'm going to group all of these together. I see that they're outside the hoop. If I select all, now I group. And now I can just slap that into place. Love that icon. I have this part done. We're all set. And if you go into the colors, you can see now that each step, because I did the first one, and then after I copied and pasted the exact same one, which is going to work out great for when we move over to go to embroidery. So the next thing I did was I didn't do Design Applique, but I did use down here, I used Design Shaping. I'm going to choose the square. And I'm going to do the exact same dimensions that I did for the applique diamonds. I'm going to change my rotation. I'm also going to rescale it to the exact same size, which was 64 and 70.8. How I came up with those numbers was because of me scaling it and playing with it on the screen, and that worked out best for me. So it's not like I did any kind of math or anything like that. I just did it all visually. And oops, you know what? I forgot to do one little thing because I'm going to bring stitches into this. So I'm going to close that for a second. Sorry, I want to bring in a stitch first. And the stitch that I brought in was this stitch right here. It's an embellishments. And it is a stitch that is set up so that you can add rhinestones to it. So it has that perfect little circle where you lay your rhinestones. So I'm going to bring that in. But I have a fixed here. I have a fixed in the beginning and the fixed in the end. And if I leave those intact, what's going to happen is it is going to do a tie off at the beginning and the end of every single individual stitch. So I want to get rid of that so that when it goes over to the embroidery side of things, it stitches out as one complete motif. So I am going to move up. So right now, this one is highlighted, so I'm going to dump that. And if I move down here, now that one is highlighted, and I'll get rid of that. So perfect. That is the stitch I want. Now I will go back into Design Applique, into Design Shaping, and grab my square, close that, rotate, and resize. Okay, so now it's the same, and I think I brought in 20 individual stitches. And if we zoom in on it, you can see that they are touching. Now the circles aren't going to touch because there is a stitch between each individual circle. So the circles themselves aren't going to touch, but these will. So I like that. And I'm just going to zoom back to my hoop and say, okay, I'm good with that. So do you see how those form? And then this is just going to go right in there. So now you can see my argyle is starting to form. And I'm just going to duplicate that just 4 times. And there you have it. Now I also want to group these all together. So what I want to do is, because each individually of those little circles, those are all their own entity right now. Even though we got rid of the fixes, each square isn't going to stop, but each square itself has each of those, you know, it's its own entity. And what I mean is that you can see all of those. So we have 20 stitches times 4. You do the math, that's a lot. I want to make sure I group those together. And the easiest way I found to group them together in my arrange is, instead of touching each one of these, I went and got rid of this first. I did save it to my machine, by the way, before I did anything. I do have this design saved to my machine. So I'm going to delete that. So it's out of my way. Now I can say select all and then group all those together. So now it's going to move it. I can move it as one. If I left the original one there with the applique, what would have happened is I would have had to select multiple and then touch each individual circle and then group it. But I found that deleting the main one first and then grouping all this, it just was time saving and it was a lot faster. And I do have the original one saved on my machine. It is here somewhere, and I called it Argyle. So there's the original one. Oh, hey, where'd you go? Oh, man. Oh, I should have used a stylus. That's okay. I have them all saved. Thank goodness they saved them all, right? Hate when that happens. Also, there's not a lot of undo on this machine either. So you get pretty proficient redoing, rebuilding because there's no undo. And I changed the color of this one earlier. I changed it to white because the background that I had that I scanned in was dark and I wanted to see these. If you're having a hard time grabbing something, if you just touch it in the arrange, it helps you pick it up. There you go. Okay. Thank goodness for saving. So you can save. I can group this together now. Select all and group it. And now it's one. And I can go in here and save this. And then I can call it. It's under new design. I can name it Argyle Final so that I know that both of those are now lined up and together. And then when we go to go, here we have color block and color block sort, color block merge, and monochromatic. If I choose color block sort, what it'll do is all the common colors, they'll group them together as one. And then if I also do color block merge, it will sew all of those colors out in the same stitching without stopping in between. And I'm not going to attach that. So if we look at this, do you see how it grouped them all together? So now it will do this whole series of this pink and then the whole series of the red. So I'm able to get all of the placement stitches, and then I could just place one strip of fabric in the hoop opposed to doing each individual thing. And it's going to be a lot easier to do one strip of fabric and then just cut one side and then come down and cut the other side than it would to do each individual square. And then all of those, see all those whites? Those are every single one of those little circles. But because I did a color block and color sort and color merge, again, all of those are going to stitch out at one time. It's not going to stop and do any tie-offs because we got rid of the fixes. And it's not going to stop in between each individual diamonds. It's going to just continue to go, which again is another time saver. Okay, so let me come back to the screen. Sorry. And if we look at this sweater, you're not looking. Let's turn it this way. My embroidery unit hit it. So if you look at this, you can see everywhere it's stitched out. So that is those stitches, and it perfectly, I was able to place all of those rhinestones in a nice formation. That did take a little bit of time, but it was so worth it because they came out really nice. One thing I want to talk to you about when you're working with upscaling garments, and I know this has nothing to do with applique, but in this case it did. Down at the bottom of my sweater, I know it's hard to tell, it doesn't necessarily match up. And that is because this was a wool sweater that was washed. It should not have been washed the way it was, and I could tell it was washed through the washer and dryer because it's slightly felted. I found this sweater at Goodwill. It was like $3, perfect price to do a project like this, just to try it out. But as I was lining things up in the hoop, I took a picture of it in the hoop, so I was able to send the image over so I can place my diamonds where I needed them to be. I measured over from, you know, the buttons and said I need to be over 1.5 inches this way. And I knew I needed to be in a certain place at the top. And I did measuring down. And what I found out as I was measuring the sweater, one front of the sweater is longer than the other one. So even though I did use precise positioning along with sending the image of what's in my hoop over to the machine, it still did not line up because I was dealing with something that is imperfect in itself. It was not a brand new sweater. It wasn't straight off the rack. It was washed a lot. It was worn a lot. So I guess what I'm getting at is I don't want you to let good get in the way of perfection. When this sweater is being worn, I highly doubt anyone is going to notice that it is not perfectly lining up at the bottom. And being that it's down by the waist, and usually when they wear sweaters like this, they don't button the last button or even the last 2 buttons. So it's not going to be noticeable. So don't beat yourself up if you have something as well that you want to upscale or alter in some way. It may not come out precisely as you hoped it would, but I looked at this and I did rehoop it a few times thinking, what did I do wrong? And then I used precise positioning and it wasn't going to come out. And it's because the measurements between the 2 fronts were 2 different measurements. And that happens. Don't lose sleep over that. And let me tell you, if this is the worst thing that's going to happen to me today, we're doing good. All righty. If you have any questions, go ahead, pop those in. Happy to answer those for you. I also want to show you that this little project here, this is a little monster that us educators have been working on, and I turned mine into a pirate because I totally love pirates. And if you look at the eye patch, this was done, and it does have, peekaboo, it does have the eye underneath. I did this in Design Applique as well, and I used eyelets. I brought in eyelets so that I have something to attach the ribbon to. So it is so nice that we are able to bring in our sewing stitches into the embroidery portion, because all I did was I just took some water soluble stabilizer, and then I layered I did start it with my applique, and for this it was a little weak at first, so I ended up adding some stabilizer on top of the water soluble stabilizer. And when it came to do the tacking, I placed it, and then it did the tacking stitch. And when I trimmed away the fabric, I also trimmed away that extra stabilizer. Not the water-soluble stabilizer that was hooped, but the extra stabilizer that gave it a little bit of body. And also, during the tacking, I also put something on the back. I kind of like taped a piece of fabric to the back so that it is 2-sided. And I trimmed that away before it went into the satin stitch as well. And then the water-soluble stabilizer, when I cut it out of the hoop, there was just little edges left. And then I just took a Q-tip and went around the edges with a wet Q-tip. So that took care of everything. So kind of like, it wasn't kind of like in the same way you would do a patch, but not so much as a patch, because you would also have something on the other back of the patch. But you get the gist. I made it a 2-sided applique, if you will. Okay. So, I forgot to tell you, on my monster quilt, have to refer back to that. If you look at my monsters, if you look at those circles, it is 2 circles. So it stitched the first one out, the outer one, and then it stitched and I went through the motions of doing all that. And then it started stitching the inner circle. Instead of placing another fabric there for that inner circle, I did it as a reverse applique. So after it did the tacking down stitches, I trimmed the fabric out and took it away, opposed to laying another piece of fabric on top of it. So not only are you doing applique, you're also doing reverse applique with it as well. And for the Christmas bulbs here, I did resize. I did resize these. These were squares. I took them down really small. And if you feel this, and I know you can't, but I can. If you feel this, you can feel that the whole entire square is there. When you're doing applique on the machine, you do not have the option like you do in software to remove overlap or anything like that. It is actually going to stitch the whole entire shape. And then if you put a shape on top of that, that shape is going to stitch even over the stitches of the previous shape. And that is okay, because the satin stitches are not that pronounced. It's not like you're doing heavy stitching on top of heavy stitching. They're pretty light. And to be honest with you, it doesn't bother me that that's under there, because I really don't notice it. It just goes away in my mind. So that is just one thing that you have to keep in mind when you're layering these shapes on the sewing machine, is they are going to stitch one shape on top of the other. All right, let's see. We do have basic shapes in the sewing machine, and you saw that we were able to morph them by turning off the lock on the resizing and the shaping. You're still a little bit limited to those, but if you have the software, and if you have in the silver, I believe you get some frames, and in there you have different shapes. So if you wanted to make patches, so let me quickly go over there to the software. All right. So sorry, you're going to look at the side of my head. So right now I'm in digitizing. That's where I'm at right now. But if I minimize that, and I'm going to say finish, and we're going to delete that. We'll get to him later. Go. I have the platinum version, but even if you have the silver version, I believe you get these frames. So if you needed to make some appliques, you can. You have additional shapes here that you can just bring into the hoop and send them over to your machine. You have those options. These also will make great patches as well. But some of these shapes, like the heart, the circle, those you already have in your machine, but you also have things like the shield that could be really fun. Also, in lettering, you have more fonts here that are applique fonts. On the machine, you only have one applique font that you can choose from, but here you have a few different ones, which is pretty cool. So this one, Ryan, is that's a satin stitch, and then you have the same font that is a blanket stitch. So you have options there. The software just gives you a little bit more creative licensing, if you will. It just lets you step out of the box a little bit more. I'm not saying you have to have software, but if you're someone who wants something truly unique, software helps you get there. I hope that makes sense. Okay. We also have, I don't think there are any in Super Design. I don't think there is, but that's okay. If we go to the Create tab and we go into digitizing, and I already have digitized. Nope, I don't have digitizing up anymore. If we go into digitizing, and I'm waiting for it to open somewhere obscured, and good. So the first thing that comes up is the wizard, and the wizard is super fun. If you have some basic shapes that you want, you can, other than your squares, triangles, and things like that, you can bring them in and do a create express border. And this automatically takes it to an applique for you. And I will go next. I'm going to load a picture. I have a picture on my desktop. And it's this little paw print. And I'm going to say, okay. And that brings the paw print into view. And we'll go next. I don't need to change anything. This is pretty good. This is it's black and white. It has a lot of contrast, and the wizards love contrast. So if you can find a design that has contrast, it's going to work out a little bit easier for you. And I will go next. I don't need to change the monochromatic threshold. I'm just going to go ahead and leave the 200 by 200 hoop in. If you want it, you can enter a design size. If you knew you needed it, if you needed it a particular size, you can do that. Go next. And now I have some options here. I can leave it as a satin line. I also have running stitch, triple, and double stitch. And then I can also choose a motif line. And with the motif lines, you have so many options to choose from because you have universal. You also have all the stitches from the Husqvarna Viking machine and from the FOF machine. So you have so many options that you can choose from if you wanted to do this as a raw edge and use those motifs. I'm not going to use motifs today. I'm going to stick with the satin. You do have options to change your satin. So you can change your width. You can change your density. The width is how far it's going to zig and zag from left to right. Density is how close those stitches are stacking on top of each other. You can also change your start and stop points. So if you're working with something that has a very defined beginning and end, you can point those out so it just doesn't look like it was just cut off. And I'm just going to leave those at the default. You know what? No, I'm going to make that a little bit wider. Let's do 2.5 and say, okay. You can also select your fabric. So it's a visual thing. You don't have to choose the fabric that you're necessarily going to stitch it out in. But if you want to play with colors and you have an idea of what color fabric you want to use, like this one's pretty fancy. I have no idea where those came from, but hey, they're there. So you have an idea. You can see what it will look like with some sort of fabric behind it. You also can change your thread colors before you get to the final stage. And I'm going to make that pretty bright so we can see that against that fabric. So you have options. And I'm going to say finish. And I'm not finished with the embroidery, digitizing it itself. I'm just finished in the wizard. And what it does is it brings you right into the digitizing portion of the software. And the one thing that I'm looking at is that right there. Do you see how that's kind of a little bit wonky? The good thing about the wizard, it's a jumping off point. I didn't have to lay all of those points. This was a pretty good image. I did find it out on the internet. And it came in pretty cleanly, but not all of them are going to come in that cleanly. And I can just adjust these nodes if that bothered you, and you can clean that up. So you're not, it is not the end all be all when you go through the wizard. You can make adjustments. So, and they came in because these were not touching, they each came in as their own entity, which is nice. So if I wanted to, I can adjust this as well. So having the software allows you just to go that one step further. And then you can just send this over to your machine. All right, I want to show you something else too. I am going to do File, New. And I'm going to start with no picture. So this is just going to take me straight to the digitizing. So I'm on a blank page. And if we go to Quick Create, we have in here even more shapes. more shapes. And a lot of these are repeats. Yep, they're on your machine and they're in other places of the software, but you can be really creative with these shapes. And I am going to select this one. And we are going to build a sheep. How's that? I don't want a pattern fill. We are doing applique, so I'm going to turn off my fill. I'm going to leave it as satin line, and I am going to tell it to go ahead and make it an applique. And if I touch the word shape there, in comes that shape. Make this a little bit bigger so that you can see this. And now I'm going to choose a different shape. And the shape I was playing with was, I believe, this one. So I already have my options. I'll click on shape and I'm going to bring that in. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to zoom in on that. Right click to drop that. I'm going to change this shape. I want this to be a little more rounded at the bottom. Actually, I don't. I think I want to do it at the top. So what I'm doing is just hitting Control Z to undo what I was doing. And I'm just moving these nodes just to give it a slightly different shape. It's not perfect. I would probably play with this a little bit more if I were to actually stitch this out. All right. So I think that's good. Let's see. I'm going to box select that so I can move it. I'm going to zoom back out so we can place that there. I don't know if you can see where I'm going with this, but it will be a sheep when we're done. And I'm going to go grab this shape here. Resize that. We can rotate. I'm going to stick that here. Maybe rotate it just a little bit more. And now I can click on it and I want to duplicate it. So now I have two. Oops. Go home so I can box select it. And I can move this over to here and flip it. There you go. And one more thing we need. You need some legs. So if I go back to quick create, and I don't have a straight line, but I do have a square. So if I just adjust the size of that square, we can have some legs, and we'll call him Lieutenant Dan because he has new legs. And let's go ahead and duplicate this as well. Oops, wrong. Over here, go to duplicate. Now we have two. And if I can get a hold of it, let me go home so I can box select it. There we go. Do you see? We just made ourselves a lamb. But they're in the wrong order right now. I want those legs to stitch out first, but I needed to bring his body in so I knew where to place them. I couldn't bring in legs, and well, I could have, but it was easier just to bring in the body. So if I grab both of his legs, I can just move them up. And also I want to move his little ears. Move those back to behind the head. So now we're in proper layers. I'm going to go back to create one more time. And I want to give them some little bit of eyes. So if I turn on my pattern, and I am going to turn off, I don't want any borderline here. I'm going to turn off applique as well. And if I go to shapes, I can just go to my circle. Do I see a circle? There you are. Shapes. And that's really big, but we will size it down. And the thing about working with these particular shapes is that it's not 100% digitized right now. They look like stitches, but they're not. Click and go home to box select that, and we can move that into place. And we can duplicate that. And it is there. And there you go. You have a little lamb. So you can look at shapes in a different way by lining them up and stacking them. They can be something totally different. I'm going to stop sharing. So just having the software, you can just have even more options. You saw it didn't take me that long to build that lamb. And now I can just send it over to my machine and I can stitch it out. And it'll probably look really cool if I did the body of it in with a minky or something like that. So if you can start looking at shapes in a different way, looking at how you can possibly morph them. You saw what I can even do on the machine, how I took from a square to a diamond. So if you just look at them, just play with them, see what they can do, see what you can turn them into, and your possibilities could truly be endless. And you can just have all kinds of fun with this. Totally love applique, and I have so much fun with it. Okay, there's no questions there, and that's okay. Hopefully it's because I answered all your questions without you asking. So let me tell you, the next Husqvarna Viking Facebook Live is November 16th, 2 p.m. with Kathy Fromm. Roll into the holidays with your serger. So we have that wonderful, and I don't know if you can see it in my background, we have the new Husqvarna Viking Amber 6S, S600S. Sorry. And I've been having fun with it. So she's going to show you how to do some fun things with the serger and get ready for the holidays. Also, the next MySewNet Facebook Live is going to be with Nancy, and she's going to explore the spiral wizard. That is fun. You just keep hitting that repeat button, and who knows what design is going to come up next. And it just reminds me of a kid when we had that little spiral graph in our pencils. So she's going to show you that, and then those could be stitched out. And it is the Amber Air S600. Thank you, Meredith. She corrected that for me. So it's the Amber Air S600. So if there are no other questions, I think we can go ahead and say goodbye and see you next time. Bye.